Lauren Ashby died at 5,700 meters on Mount Kilimanjaro. She was 34 years old. She suffered a massive stroke while being carried down the mountain on a stretcher. The man leading that stretcher, the man desperately trying to save her, was the same porter she had mocked on camera 3 days earlier for his English. His name was Joseph Makundi. He spoke 4 languages. Lauren spoke 1. That's the version of this story you've probably heard. Reality star disrespects local guide. Ignores his advice. Dies on the mountain. Karma. Justice. Case closed. But that's not the full story. Not even close. Here's what nobody reported. Lauren's death wasn't caused by one moment of arrogance. It was caused by a chain of decisions made by at least 6 different people over 11 days. Lauren made some of those decisions. Her production crew made others. Her network made the worst one of all, before she ever set foot on Kilimanjaro. And the footage that could have proven exactly what happened, her crew destroyed it. Not accidentally, deliberately. Before the investigation even started. This is the complete story of Lauren Ashby's death on Kilimanjaro. Every decision, every warning ignored, every person who failed her, every person she failed, and the one man who tried to save her life despite every reason not to. If you think this is a simple story about an entitled celebrity getting what she deserved, you're wrong. This is darker than that, more complicated than that, and far more disturbing. Let's start with what Lauren Ashby was actually doing on Kilimanjaro. Because she didn't choose to climb this mountain. Someone chose it for her. And that someone knew something about Lauren's health that they never told the climbing team. Lauren Ashby was a cast member on a reality show called Beyond Limits. The concept was simple. Take 5 semi-famous personalities from different reality TV backgrounds and film them attempting extreme physical challenges around the world. Season 1 had been skydiving, open water swimming, and desert endurance. Season 2 was mountains. The network had selected 3 peaks across 3 continents. Kilimanjaro was the first. The show wasn't Lauren's idea. The mountain wasn't Lauren's idea. The timeline, critically, wasn't Lauren's idea either. The network needed all 3 mountain episodes filmed in a 14-week window to meet their broadcast schedule. That meant Kilimanjaro had to be completed in 11 days. Arrival to summit to departure. 11 days. No flexibility. For context, the standard Kilimanjaro climbing itinerary ranges from 5 to 9 days on the mountain itself. The recommended route for inexperienced climbers, the Lemosho route, which Lauren's team was using, is typically 7 to 8 days. Adding an extra acclimatization day is standard medical advice for anyone showing early symptoms. Lauren's production schedule allowed for exactly 0 extra days. Now here's the detail that changes everything about this story. Before Lauren flew to Tanzania, she underwent a production medical screening. This is standard for reality TV involving physical risk. The screening was conducted by a physician contracted by the network. His name was Dr. Brian Hollister. He examined all 5 cast members over 2 days in Los Angeles. 4 of them passed without issues. Lauren didn't. Dr. Hollister's report, which wouldn't surface publicly until the lawsuit 18 months later, noted that Lauren had a history of exercise-induced migraines. She'd been hospitalized once in 2017 after a severe migraine during a charity marathon. The hospitalization records indicated she'd experienced transient neurological symptoms, temporary vision loss, slurred speech, numbness in her left hand. These resolved within hours. She was discharged with a referral to a neurologist. Dr. Hollister flagged this in his report. He didn't disqualify Lauren, but he wrote, and this is the exact language from the lawsuit filing, candidate presents with history of vascular migraine events with neurological involvement. High-altitude activity carries elevated risk of cerebrovascular incident. Recommend specialist clearance before proceeding. The network received this report on November 12, 2019. Lauren flew to Tanzania on December 28, 2019. In between, no specialist clearance was obtained. No neurologist was consulted. Lauren was never informed of Dr. Hollister's recommendation. She didn't know she was at elevated risk. Her climbing team didn't know. Joseph Makundi didn't know. The only people who knew were network executives and a production coordinator named Sandra Voss, who would later testify that she raised concerns and was told, her words, "We've already sold the ad slots. She's going." So before Lauren ever landed in Tanzania, before she ever met Joseph Makundi, before she ever said a single word about his English, the network had already made the first fatal decision. They sent a woman with a documented vascular condition to high altitude without specialist clearance, and without telling anyone who could have protected her. That's not karma. That's negligence. But here's the thing. The network's failure doesn't erase Lauren's choices. Because Lauren made her own decisions on that mountain. Bad ones. Cruel ones. Decisions that directly contributed to her death. The story isn't simple in either direction. She wasn't purely a victim. She wasn't purely a villain. She was a complicated, flawed person in a situation designed to kill her, making choices that accelerated the timeline. And Joseph Makundi was caught in the middle of all of it. Joseph had been leading porter teams on Kilimanjaro for 14 years. He'd completed over 200 ascents. He'd guided clients from 37 different countries. He spoke Swahili, English, French, and basic German. He had a reputation among climbing companies as one of the most reliable team leaders on the mountain. He was 41 years old. He had a wife named Grace and 3 children. His eldest daughter, Amara, was studying nursing in Dar es Salaam on money Joseph had saved from 15 years of porter work. When Lauren mocked his English on camera, when she turned to her crew and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Can someone get me a guide who actually speaks the language?" Joseph understood every word. He chose not to respond, not because he couldn't, because responding to clients wasn't his job. Getting them up and down the mountain alive was his job. 3 days later, Joseph would be carrying Lauren's unconscious body down a rocky trail in darkness, screaming for the evacuation team that was already 90 minutes late. He would perform CPR on a woman who had humiliated him in front of his own team. He would fail to save her. And he would carry that failure for years, despite doing everything right. Everyone talks about the moment Lauren mocked Joseph. Nobody talks about the 11 days of decisions that turned a manageable risk into a death sentence. Nobody talks about the production crew that kept filming instead of intervening when Lauren showed obvious symptoms. Nobody talks about the evacuation coordinator who sent the stretcher team to the wrong checkpoint. Nobody talks about the network executive who read a medical report flagging vascular risk and decided ad revenue mattered more. This documentary covers all of it. Every warning, every dismissal, every decision, every failure. By the end, you'll understand exactly how Lauren Ashby died. Not the simplified version, not the karma narrative, not the headline. The truth. All of it, including the parts that were deliberately hidden. And you'll understand why Joseph Makundi, the man she mocked, the man who tried to save her, the man everyone called a hero afterward, says he doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a witness to something preventable, something that should never have happened, something that was already in motion before Lauren Ashby ever set foot on his mountain. The question isn't whether Lauren was arrogant. She was. The question is whether her arrogance killed her, or whether she was dead before she started climbing, and nobody bothered to tell her. To answer that, you need to understand who Lauren Ashby actually was. Not the reality TV character, not the viral clip of her mocking a porter, the actual person. Because the woman who arrived in Tanzania on December 28, 2019, was carrying more than a vascular condition the network hadn't disclosed. She was carrying pressure, fear, and a secret about her career that made turning back from Kilimanjaro feel impossible. And that pressure, more than ego, more than arrogance, more than any single moment caught on camera, was the thing that kept her climbing when every signal told her to stop. Chapter 2. The Woman Before the Mountain. Lauren Ashby wasn't born famous. She wasn't born wealthy. She wasn't born entitled. She became those things. And understanding how she became them is the only way to understand why she refused to come down from Kilimanjaro when coming down would have saved her life. Lauren grew up in Medford, Oregon. Her father drove a delivery truck for a regional grocery chain. Her mother worked part-time at a veterinary clinic. They weren't poor, but they weren't comfortable. Lauren shared a bedroom with her younger sister Claire until she was 16. She played volleyball in high school. She was good. Not great. She got a partial athletic scholarship to a small college in Southern California. She studied communications. She graduated with $38,000 in student loan debt and no clear plan. What Lauren did have was a specific kind of charisma. Not warmth, not charm, presence. When Lauren walked into a room, people looked at her. When she spoke, people listened. Not because she said smart things, because she said things with absolute conviction. She could make the most ordinary opinion sound like a revelation. She could make you feel stupid for disagreeing, even when she was wrong. Especially when she was wrong. This quality made her perfect for reality television. Lauren's first appearance was on a dating show in 2015. She lasted 4 episodes. She wasn't the winner. She wasn't the villain. She was the one people remembered. The producers noticed. She was invited back for a reunion special, then cast in a competition show in 2016, then another in 2017. Each time, her role was the same. The confident one. The one who said what everyone else was thinking but wouldn't say. The one who looked directly into the camera and owned the moment. By 2018, Lauren had 1.2 million Instagram followers. She had a manager. She had brand deals. She had moved from a shared apartment in North Hollywood to a one-bedroom in West Hollywood. She was making more money than her parents combined. She sent her mother $500 every month. She paid off Claire's car. She started talking about buying property. But here's what the followers didn't see. The money was inconsistent. Reality TV doesn't pay residuals the way scripted television does. Brand deals came and went. Lauren's relevance depended entirely on staying on screen. Every month without a new show was a month her follower count dipped. Every dip meant lower rates for sponsored posts. Every lower rate meant less money. The cycle was relentless. By mid-2019, Lauren was in trouble. She hadn't been cast in anything for 7 months. Her follower count had dropped to 940,000. 2 brand deals had fallen through. Her manager, a guy named Rick Delano, told her directly, "You need a show by January or we need to talk about the future of this." The future of this. Meaning their professional relationship. Meaning her career. When Beyond Limits came calling in September 2019, Lauren didn't hesitate. She didn't ask about the physical demands. She didn't ask about the mountains. She didn't ask about the medical screening requirements. She said yes the same day. Beyond Limits was offering $85,000 for the full season. 3 mountains. 14 weeks of filming. For Lauren, it wasn't just money. It was relevance. A new show meant new clips, new content, new followers, new brand deals. It meant survival in an industry that discards people the moment they stop being interesting. Lauren needed this show. And the network knew it. Now, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more deep investigations like this one. Because what you're about to hear is the kind of detail other documentaries skip entirely. We don't skip anything. The other 4 cast members of Beyond Limits were all in similar positions. Semi-famous, declining relevance, hungry for screen time. But none of them had Lauren's medical history. And none of them had Lauren's specific psychological makeup, the one that made backing down from anything feel like professional death. Lauren's ex-boyfriend, a personal trainer named Marcus Webb, gave an interview after her death that explained something crucial. He said Lauren had a pathological fear of being perceived as weak. Not physical weakness, professional weakness. She believed, and Marcus said she said this explicitly, that the moment she showed vulnerability on camera, she was done. The audience would lose interest. The producers would cut her screen time. The brands would walk. She once filmed a segment with a 102-degree fever, Marcus said. She told me afterwards she'd rather die on camera than be the girl who quit. I thought she was exaggerating. She wasn't. That mentality, that absolute refusal to show weakness, would prove fatal on Kilimanjaro. But it wasn't just Lauren's personality. It was reinforced by the production environment. The show's director, a man named Craig Weston, had a specific filming philosophy. He called it "pressure reveals character." His approach was to create situations where cast members felt they couldn't back down, then film the results. In previous seasons, this meant filming exhausted swimmers being told the boat was leaving, or skydivers being told the weather window was closing. Create urgency. Film the reaction. Get the content. On Kilimanjaro, this philosophy would collide with altitude medicine, and the results would be catastrophic. Now let's talk about Joseph Makundi. Because Joseph's story matters just as much as Lauren's. Maybe more. Joseph was born in Moshi, the town at the base of Kilimanjaro. The mountain was the first thing he saw every morning of his childhood. His father had been a porter. His uncle had been a porter. His older brother had been a porter until a knee injury ended his career at age 29. Portering on Kilimanjaro isn't a hobby, it's a generational profession. It's also one of the most physically demanding and poorly compensated jobs in the tourism industry. Porters on Kilimanjaro carry up to 20 kilograms of client gear, food, and equipment. They earn between $8 and $15 per day, depending on the climbing company. Tips from clients can double or triple this amount. But tips are inconsistent. Some clients tip generously. Some don't tip at all. Joseph had once carried 25 kilograms for 6 days for a European client who tipped him the equivalent of $3. As a team leader, Joseph earned slightly more. His monthly income during peak season was approximately $600 to $800. During off-season, it dropped to almost nothing. He had no health insurance, no retirement plan, no disability coverage. When porters are injured on the mountain, and injuries are common, they pay their own medical bills or they don't get treated. Despite all of this, Joseph loved his work. His colleagues described him as calm, professional, and deeply knowledgeable about Kilimanjaro's conditions. He could read weather changes by looking at cloud formations over Kibo Peak. He knew every route, every camp, every water source, every danger zone. He had personally witnessed 4 client deaths in 14 years. Each one had taught him something. Each one had made him more cautious, more insistent about safety, more willing to push back against clients who wanted to move too fast. Joseph's English was excellent. Not perfect. He occasionally mixed up prepositions. His accent was thick. He sometimes paused to find the right word. But he could communicate complex medical concepts, symptoms of altitude sickness, descent protocols, hydration requirements, clearly and accurately. He'd learned English from clients over 14 years. He'd learned French the same way. His German was more limited but functional. When Lauren Ashby arrived in Moshi on December 28, 2019, Joseph was assigned as her porter team leader by the climbing company Summit Dreams Tanzania. The company had worked with film crews before. They knew production teams were demanding. They specifically chose Joseph because of his experience, his communication skills, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. Joseph met Lauren at the hotel in Moshi the evening before the climb began. He introduced himself. He explained the route. He explained the acclimatization schedule. He explained the symptoms to watch for. Lauren was on her phone for most of the briefing. Craig Weston, the director, was more engaged. He asked about camera angles at each camp. He asked about sunrise timing for summit day. He did not ask about emergency evacuation procedures. Joseph noticed Lauren's disengagement. He noted it privately to his assistant team leader, a porter named Elias Kamaro. Elias would later recall Joseph saying, in Swahili, "This one doesn't listen. We'll need to watch her closely." It was the first warning about Lauren Ashby. It would not be the last. The climbing team assembled the next morning. Lauren was one of 2 Beyond Limits cast members assigned to the Kilimanjaro episode. The other was a fitness influencer named Derek Tran, who had significantly more outdoor experience than Lauren. The production crew consisted of Craig Weston, a camera operator named Mia Chen, a sound technician named Paulo Reyes, and Sandra Voss, the production coordinator who had already raised concerns about Lauren's medical clearance with the network. Sandra was the only person in Tanzania who knew about Dr. Hollister's medical report. She carried that knowledge silently. She'd been told not to share it. She'd been told Lauren was fine. She didn't believe it. But Sandra was a freelancer. This was her biggest contract of the year. Raising concerns again meant risking her relationship with the network. She stayed quiet. If you're finding this investigation compelling, drop a comment below telling me who you think bears the most responsibility. Lauren? The network? Joseph? Someone else? We're reading every comment on this one. So by December 29, 2019, the morning the climb began, here is what each person knew and didn't know. Lauren knew she was climbing Kilimanjaro. She knew she needed to summit for the show. She did not know about Dr. Hollister's vascular risk flag. She did not know the production schedule allowed zero flexibility for acclimatization delays. She believed she was physically cleared and healthy. Joseph knew he was leading a porter team for a film crew. He knew film crews were often impatient. He did not know about Lauren's medical history. He did not know the production had a fixed 11-day timeline. He believed he had the authority to recommend schedule changes if needed. Sandra knew about the medical report. She knew about the fixed timeline. She knew about the network's response to her concerns. She told no one. Craig knew what made good television. He knew pressure created compelling footage. He knew Lauren's personality would generate conflict. He did not know about the medical report. He did not care about acclimatization schedules, beyond how they affected his shooting plan. The network knew everything. They did nothing. And Joseph Makundi, the man about to spend 9 days managing all of these hidden agendas while keeping everyone alive, knew the least of anyone. He was operating with incomplete information. He was about to make decisions based on what he could see. And what he could see would tell him something was very wrong with Lauren Ashby days before she collapsed. He would be right. And being right wouldn't be enough. The climb started on a clear morning. By noon, Lauren had already complained about the pace, the food, the tent assignments, and Joseph's accent. The cameras were rolling. The clock was ticking. And somewhere in Lauren Ashby's vascular system, a weakness that Dr. Hollister had flagged and the network had ignored, was silently waiting. Chapter 3. The Warnings Nobody Heard. The first warning came on day 2, January 1st, 2020. They were at Shira Camp, approximately 3,840 meters. Lauren had a headache. Not unusual at that altitude. Most climbers experience some degree of discomfort as their bodies adjust. Joseph checked on her at 4 p.m. during the routine afternoon assessment he conducted with every client. Lauren told him the headache was fine. Joseph asked her to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. She said 3. Joseph asked if she'd been drinking enough water. She said yes. Joseph noted her eyes. They were slightly glassy. Her speech was normal. Her coordination was normal. Her appetite at dinner was reduced, but not alarmingly so. Joseph recorded mild AMS symptoms in his logbook. He recommended she take the following days slowly. This is important. Joseph did his job perfectly on day 2. He assessed. He recorded. He recommended. Lauren's headache was within normal parameters. There was no reason to escalate. Not yet. The problem wasn't day 2. The problem was what happened between day 2 and day 4 that nobody outside the production team saw. Craig Weston wanted content. Specifically, he wanted what he called character friction. The show's format depended on interpersonal conflict. Lauren versus the mountain was good television. Lauren versus another person was better television. And the most available target was Joseph. On the evening of day 2, Craig pulled Lauren aside. This conversation was not filmed. It was described in Sandra Voss's later testimony. According to Sandra, Craig told Lauren that the footage so far was flat. He said the audience needed to see Lauren being Lauren. He said the other cast member, Derek Tran, was too boring to generate conflict. He suggested Lauren engage more with the local team. Sandra's exact quote from her testimony: Craig didn't tell Lauren to be mean to Joseph. He didn't have to. He told her the footage was boring and she needed to create moments. Lauren knew exactly what that meant. That's what she'd been doing on television for 5 years. The next morning, day 3, January 2nd, Lauren began what would become 3 days of escalating confrontation with Joseph. The first incident was minor. Lauren asked Joseph to repeat an instruction about the day's hiking schedule. When Joseph repeated it, Lauren turned to Mia Chen's camera and said, "Did anyone catch that? Because I didn't understand a single word." The porters heard it. Joseph heard it. He said nothing. He repeated the instruction a third time, slowly and clearly. Lauren waved him off and started walking. If you're watching this and thinking you know where this is going, stay with me. Because what happened next isn't what you expect. The second incident came that afternoon. Lauren was struggling with the altitude. Her pace had slowed significantly. She was breathing hard. Her headache had returned. Joseph approached her and suggested they slow the group's pace further. Lauren's response, captured on camera and later leaked online, was the clip that went viral. She said, "Can someone get me a guide who actually speaks the language? I can't understand what he's saying and I don't have time for a translation." She said it loudly. She said it in front of Joseph's entire porter team. 8 men who worked under Joseph, who respected him, who knew exactly how many languages he spoke. Elias Camaro later said the porters were furious. Joseph told them, in Swahili, to keep working. He told them it wasn't personal. He told them she was struggling with the altitude, and people say things they don't mean when they're sick. But here's the thing the viral clip didn't include. 5 minutes after Lauren said that, Joseph walked up to her again. He didn't address her comment. He didn't defend his English. He said, "Miss Lauren, your headache is worse today. Your pace is slow. I think we should add 1 extra day for acclimatization before going higher. This is my medical recommendation." That recommendation, an extra day, would have changed everything. 1 additional day at Shira Camp would have given Lauren's body more time to adjust. It would have put them at a lower altitude for an additional 24 hours. For a person with Lauren's undisclosed vascular condition, that extra day might have been the difference between a manageable ascent and a fatal one. Lauren didn't respond to Joseph directly. She turned to Craig Weston and said, "Are we doing this on schedule or not?" Craig looked at his shooting plan. He looked at the weather forecast. He looked at the 11-day timeline the network had mandated. He said, "We stick to the schedule." Joseph asked Craig directly, "You understand I am recommending an additional acclimatization day for medical reasons?" Craig's response, captured on audio by Paulo Reyes's equipment, noted, "But we have a production schedule. She'll be fine." That was warning number 1. Officially rejected. Now subscribe to this channel right now if you believe people's lives matter more than production schedules. Because what happened next proves they didn't. Not on this mountain. Not for this network. Warning number 2 came from Sandra Voss. On the evening of day 3, Sandra approached Craig privately. She told him Lauren's headache was concerning. She told him that the medical screening had flagged potential issues. She did not specify what issues. Later, she would testify that she was afraid of violating the NDA the network had made her sign regarding cast medical information. But she told Craig that pushing Lauren higher without an extra day was risky. Craig asked Sandra if she was a doctor. She said no. Craig told her to focus on logistics and leave medical decisions to the climbing guides. Sandra pointed out that the climbing guide, Joseph, had just recommended an extra day and been overruled. Craig told her the conversation was over. Sandra went back to her tent. She did not raise the issue again. She would later describe this as the decision she regrets most in her life. "I should have told Joseph directly," she said in her testimony. "I should have told him about the medical report. I should have ignored the NDA. But I was scared. I was scared of losing my career, and Lauren died because I was scared." Warning number 3 came from an unexpected source. Derek Tran, the other cast member, had more outdoor experience than anyone on the production team. He'd hiked at altitude in Nepal, Peru, and Colorado. He knew what altitude sickness looked like. On day 4, January 3rd, he told Craig that Lauren's symptoms were getting worse. "She's not eating," Derek said. This was captured on B-roll audio that was later subpoenaed. "She threw up twice this morning. She's got a headache that hasn't gone away in 3 days. Dude, this isn't normal. She needs to go down, not up." Craig's response, "Derek, I need you to focus on your own climb. Lauren's tough. She'll push through." Derek pushed back. "This isn't about tough. This is altitude sickness. It doesn't care about tough." Craig ended the conversation. Derek would later say in an interview that he considered refusing to continue climbing in solidarity with Lauren. He didn't. He kept climbing. He summited successfully on day 8. He has never returned to Kilimanjaro. 3 warnings. 3 dismissals. Joseph's medical recommendation. Sandra's attempt to flag the medical history. Derek's observation of worsening symptoms. All three ignored by one person, Craig Weston. But Craig wasn't acting alone. Craig was executing a production schedule mandated by the network. A network that had read Dr. Hollister's medical report, ignored his recommendation for specialist clearance, and sent Lauren to altitude anyway. Craig's refusal to add an acclimatization day wasn't just his decision, it was the network's decision, made months earlier, being enforced on the mountain in real time. Now let's talk about what was happening inside Lauren's body. Because while all of these human decisions were being made, a biological process was underway that nobody could see and nobody was monitoring adequately. At sea level, Lauren's vascular system functioned normally. Her history of exercise-induced migraines with neurological symptoms indicated that under physical stress, the blood vessels in her brain were prone to abnormal constriction and dilation. At low altitude, this was manageable, uncomfortable, occasionally scary, but manageable. At 840 meters, the air contains roughly 40% less oxygen than at sea level. The body compensates by increasing heart rate and breathing rate. Blood vessels in the brain dilate to allow more blood flow. For most people, this causes a headache. For Lauren, with her predisposition to vascular instability, this dilation was more extreme. Her headaches weren't typical altitude headaches. They were vascular events. Each one was stressing blood vessels that were already vulnerable. Every hour Lauren spent at altitude without adequate acclimatization increased the stress on those vessels. Every day she climbed higher without the extra rest Joseph recommended compounded the risk. Her body was sending signals: headaches, nausea, fatigue, reduced appetite, and every signal was being interpreted as normal altitude discomfort by the people around her. It wasn't normal. Not for her. Not with her history. But nobody on that mountain knew her history except Sandra Voss. And Sandra had been silenced. By day 5, January 4th, they reached Barranco Camp at 960 meters. Lauren's condition had visibly deteriorated. She was unsteady on her feet during the approach. She vomited during dinner. She complained of blurred vision, briefly, then said it passed. Joseph noted all of these symptoms in his logbook. That evening, he made his second formal recommendation to the production team. Miss Lauren needs to descend, Joseph told Craig and Sandra together. Her symptoms are progressing. Headache for 3 days, nausea, vomiting, now visual disturbance. These are signs of serious altitude sickness. She should descend to at least 3,000 meters and rest for 2 days before attempting to go higher. Craig asked Joseph if Lauren was in immediate danger. Joseph said not immediate, but the symptoms were concerning and could worsen rapidly at higher altitude. Craig asked how many clients Joseph had seen with similar symptoms who went on to summit successfully. Joseph said many. Craig said, then she'll be fine. Joseph said, many also had to be evacuated. Some died. I cannot predict which group she will be in. That is why I recommend descent. Craig thanked Joseph for his input. Lauren was not consulted about this conversation. She was in her tent. Craig did not tell her about Joseph's recommendation to descend. This is crucial. Lauren didn't know Joseph had recommended descent. She knew he'd recommended an extra day earlier, and she'd dismissed it. But the descent recommendation on day 5 was made to Craig, not to Lauren. Craig made the decision not to pass it along. Was Lauren arrogant? Yes. Was she difficult? Yes. Did she mock Joseph? Yes. But was she given full information about the medical recommendations being made on her behalf? No. She was kept in the dark. By her own production team. On a mountain where information can mean the difference between life and death. Drop a comment if you think Craig Weston should have faced criminal charges for what happened next. Because on day 6, Lauren Ashby began the final ascent toward Stella Point. And Joseph Makundi, overruled twice, dismissed by Lauren, ignored by Craig, had run out of options to save a woman who didn't know she needed saving. He climbed alongside her anyway, because that was his job. And Joseph Makundi did his job, even when nobody else did theirs. The summit push was scheduled for the night of January 6th. Lauren had 42 hours left to live. And the evacuation system that was supposed to save her if everything went wrong? It had a flaw that nobody had tested, nobody had checked, nobody even knew about. That flaw would cost Lauren Ashby 90 minutes. 90 minutes she didn't have. Chapter 4. Summit Night, January 6, 2020, 11:45 p.m. Barafu Camp. 4. 673 meters. Lauren Ashby stepped out of her tent and into darkness. The summit push had begun. The standard Kilimanjaro summit approach from Barafu Camp is approximately 6 to 8 hours. Climbers leave near midnight. They ascend through darkness. They aim to reach Stella Point, the crater rim at 5,756 meters by dawn. From Stella Point, it's another 1 to 2 hours to Uhuru Peak, the true summit at 5,895 meters. Lauren had slept for approximately 90 minutes before the wake-up call. She'd vomited once during the evening. Her headache was persistent. Joseph checked on her before departure and noted in his logbook. Client pale. Slow to respond to questions. Headache rated 6/10. Recommended reassessment at each rest stop. Client insists on proceeding. That last line mattered. Lauren did insist. Craig had told her earlier that evening that the weather window was perfect, and that missing it would mean losing the summit footage entirely. He told her Derek Tran had already committed to going. He told her the network was expecting summit footage by January 10th. Lauren told Craig she was fine. She told Joseph she was fine. She told Mia Chen, who was shouldering her camera in the darkness, that she felt amazing. She wasn't fine. Everyone who saw her knew she wasn't fine. But she was walking, and as long as she was walking, nobody stopped her. The ascent began at midnight. The group moved slowly. Joseph set the pace, deliberately slow, even by Kilimanjaro summit night standards. He was compensating for Lauren's condition. Every 30 minutes, he stopped the group for a rest break. At each break, he checked Lauren's responsiveness, asked about her headache, and offered water. For the first 3 hours, Lauren was functional, slow, clearly struggling, but functional. She complained about the cold. She complained about the pace. She asked twice how much farther it was. Normal behavior for a struggling climber. At 3:15 a.m., approximately 5,200 meters, something changed. Joseph noticed it first. Lauren stopped talking. For 3 hours, she'd been a constant stream of complaints and comments. Then, silence. Joseph moved to walk beside her. He asked how she was feeling. She said fine. Her voice was flat. No inflection, no energy, just the word. Joseph asked about her headache. She said fine. The same flat tone. Joseph shone his headlamp at her face. Her eyes were open but unfocused. She was staring straight ahead. She was walking, but her gait had changed, slightly uncoordinated, slightly uneven. Joseph had seen this before. Not often, but enough. He pulled Craig aside. "We need to stop," he said. "Something is wrong with Miss Lauren. Her behavior has changed. I believe she may be developing HACE, high-altitude cerebral edema, the brain swelling that kills climbers at altitude. The progression Joseph had warned about on day 5 when he recommended descent. The recommendation Craig had ignored. Craig looked at Lauren. She was still standing, still walking when the group moved. He asked Joseph how sure he was. "I am not a doctor," Joseph said. "I am telling you what I see. She is not the same person as 3 hours ago. We should descend now." Craig asked Lauren directly. "Lauren, how are you feeling? Joseph thinks we should go back down." Lauren looked at Craig. According to both Craig's later statement and Mia Chen's testimony, Lauren said, "I'm not going down. I'm almost there." She was not almost there. She was approximately 3 hours from Stella Point, 5 hours from the summit, but she believed she was almost there. And that belief, whether it was determination, denial, or the early cognitive impairment of cerebral edema, kept her climbing. Craig made a decision. He told Joseph they would continue, but would reassess in 30 minutes. Joseph argued. Craig overruled him. Joseph asked Craig to sign the logbook, acknowledging that the guide's recommendation had been rejected. Craig refused to sign. Joseph wrote in his logbook, 3:20 a.m. Recommended immediate descent. Overruled by production leader. Client shows signs of altered mental status. Continuing under protest. Those 12 words would become central to the lawsuit. They kept climbing. Now, if this investigation is making you rethink everything you heard about this story, share it with someone who needs to hear the truth. This is the most detailed account of what happened on that mountain ever published. At 4 a.m., approximately 350 meters, Lauren stumbled. Not a trip over a rock. A full-body stumble where her legs simply failed to coordinate. Joseph caught her arm. She looked at him with an expression Elias Camaro would later describe as empty. Like looking at someone who wasn't entirely there. Joseph made a decision. He told Craig they were descending. Not a recommendation. A statement. We are going down now, Craig protested. Lauren protested. Her protest was slurred. The word no came out elongated, imprecise. Even Craig noticed. For the first time, fear crossed his face. But then Lauren straightened up. She shook her head. She took a drink of water. She said, more clearly this time, I'm okay, I just tripped, let's keep going. This is what altitude sickness does. It fluctuates. A person can seem impaired one moment and lucid the next. These windows of apparent clarity are dangerous because they convince everyone, including the patient, that the crisis has passed. It hasn't passed. It's building. The lucid moments get shorter. The impaired moments get longer, until there are no more lucid moments. Joseph knew this. But Lauren was talking clearly. She was standing independently. She was insisting on continuing. And Craig was backing her up. Joseph faced an impossible situation. He was a Porter team leader. Not a doctor. Not the expedition leader. The climbing company, Summit Dreams Tanzania, had assigned overall expedition authority to the production team because of the filming contract. Joseph had advisory authority only. He could recommend, he could protest, he could document. But he couldn't physically force a client to descend. He did the only thing he could. He told Elias to radio base camp and request that the evacuation stretcher team be positioned at Stella Point as a precaution. If Lauren collapsed higher on the mountain, having a stretcher team already at altitude would save critical time. Elias made the radio call at 4:15 a.m. The base camp coordinator, a Summit Dreams employee named Francis Matui, acknowledged the request. He said he would dispatch the stretcher team to Stella Point. This is where the evacuation flaw, the one nobody had tested, entered the story. The stretcher team at base camp consisted of 4 porters specially trained in high-altitude evacuation. Their standard staging point was Barafu Camp, not Stella Point. To reach Stella Point from Barafu, they needed approximately 4 to 5 hours of climbing. Joseph's request at 4:15 a.m. meant the stretcher team should arrive at Stella Point by approximately 8:30 to 9:15 a.m. Francis Matui dispatched the team at 4:30 a.m., but he sent them on the standard route from Barafu to Stella Point, the same route Lauren's group was climbing. This meant the stretcher team was climbing behind Lauren's group, not ahead of them. If Lauren collapsed before reaching Stella Point, the stretcher team would still be below her. They'd have to climb past the collapse point, then come back down. Or they'd arrive at Stella Point and have to descend to reach her. The correct protocol, which Summit Dreams had never formally established, would have been to send the stretcher team on the alternative route that approaches Stella Point from the western side, allowing them to stage at Stella Point independently of the client's route. Nobody caught this error. Joseph didn't know which route Francis had sent the team. Francis didn't know exactly where Lauren was or how fast she was moving. The communication was a single radio exchange, no confirmation of routing, no GPS coordination, no follow-up. At 5:45 a.m., approximately 500 meters, Lauren collapsed. She didn't stumble this time. She stopped walking. She stood still for approximately 10 seconds. Then her legs buckled, and she went down. Joseph caught her before she hit the ground. He lowered her onto the trail. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't tracking movement. She didn't respond to her name. She was breathing, rapid, shallow breaths. Her pulse was fast and irregular. Joseph began emergency descent procedures immediately. He and Elias positioned Lauren between them, supporting her weight. They began moving downhill. Craig was shouting. Mia was filming. Paolo had dropped his sound equipment. Sandra was crying. Joseph shouted at Mia to stop filming and help carry equipment. She didn't stop immediately. She filmed for another 45 seconds before Craig, to his credit, told her to put the camera down and help. Those 45 seconds of footage would later be described by Lauren's family's attorney as, quote, the most damning evidence of the production team's priorities. A woman was having a medical emergency, and the camera operator's instinct was to keep filming. Joseph radioed Elias, who radioed Francis at base camp. Client collapsed at 500 meters. Non-responsive, descending now. Where is the stretcher team? Francis's response. Stretcher team is on the trail. Approximately 100 meters. Joseph stopped. The stretcher team was at 100 meters. Lauren had collapsed at 500 meters. They were above the stretcher team. The stretcher team was climbing toward them, but Lauren needed to go down, not up. They would meet somewhere in between, but somewhere in between meant the stretcher team needed to climb another 200 to 400 meters before they'd intersect with Joseph's descending group. That intersection would take approximately 90 minutes. 90 minutes that Lauren Ashby did not have. Joseph didn't wait. He couldn't. He and Elias half-carried, half-dragged Lauren down the trail. She was semi-conscious now. Occasionally her eyes would focus. Occasionally she'd make a sound. But she couldn't support her own weight. She couldn't walk. At 400 meters, Lauren had a seizure. It lasted approximately 30 seconds. Joseph held her head to prevent injury. When the seizure stopped, Lauren's eyes were closed. She was breathing, but unresponsive. Joseph screamed for the stretcher team. His voice echoed off the rock. Nothing came back. At 300 meters, approximately 6:30 a.m., they met the stretcher team coming up. The stretcher carriers took over. They strapped Lauren to the evacuation stretcher. They began rapid descent. At 700 meters is where the official reports say Lauren suffered her fatal stroke. But the descent had already passed 700 meters on the way down. The timeline reconstruction from the lawsuit suggests Lauren's stroke occurred somewhere between 400 and 200 meters during the stretcher descent, approximately between 6:45 and 7:15 a.m. The stroke was massive, a hemorrhagic event in her brain. The vascular weakness that Dr. Hollister had flagged 11 months earlier, the one the network had ignored, had failed catastrophically under the combined stress of altitude, exertion, dehydration, and prolonged exposure. Joseph was walking beside the stretcher when Lauren stopped breathing. He performed CPR. He had been trained in CPR as part of his Porter Team Leader certification. He performed chest compressions for 12 minutes, while the stretcher team continued descending as fast as the terrain allowed. Lauren Ashby was pronounced dead at a medical facility in Moshi at 2:15 p.m. on January 7, 2020. Cause of death: hemorrhagic stroke secondary to altitude-related vascular stress. She was 34 years old. Joseph Makundi carried her gear down from the mountain, all of it. Her pack, her jacket, her water bottles. He carried it in silence. When he reached base camp, he sat on a rock and didn't move for 3 hours. Elias brought him water. Joseph didn't drink it. The woman who had mocked his English was dead. Joseph had done everything in his power to prevent it. He had warned the production team 4 separate times. He had been overruled every time. He had carried her when she couldn't walk. He had performed CPR when her heart stopped. He had failed to save her. But Joseph hadn't failed. He was the only person on that mountain who consistently put Lauren's safety above every other consideration. The only one. And within 48 hours, the production crew would begin the process of making sure nobody knew that. Chapter 5. The cover-up started before the body was cold. Lauren Ashby was still being transported to the Moshi Medical Facility when Craig Weston made a phone call to the network. This call was logged at 11:30 a.m. on January 7, 2020, approximately 3 hours before Lauren was officially pronounced dead. Craig already knew she was gone. The medical personnel on the descent had told the team that Lauren had no brain activity. The hospital pronouncement was a formality. Craig's phone call was not to express grief. It was not to notify Lauren's family. It was to ask the network's legal department what to do with the footage. We know this because Sandra Voss was standing 6 feet away from Craig when he made the call. She heard his side of the conversation. She would later testify to every word she could recall. He said, "We have a situation," Sandra testified. He described what happened, very clinical, very calm. Then he asked about the footage. He said, "We have everything on camera. The collapse, the descent, everything." He listened for about 30 seconds. Then he said, "Understood. I'll handle it." Sandra asked Craig what the network had said. Craig told her they needed to secure all footage immediately. He told Mia Chen and Paulo Reyes to hand over all memory cards, backup drives, and personal recording devices. Everything was to be given to Craig. "No copies." Mia complied. Paulo complied. Sandra noted the time, 11:45 a.m., before the hospital pronouncement, before the family notification, before any investigation. The network's first priority was controlling the footage. Now, if you think this behavior is normal for a production company dealing with a tragedy, subscribe to this channel, because we're about to show you exactly how abnormal it was. Within 24 hours of Lauren's death, the following footage existed. Mia Chen's camera had recorded approximately 74 hours of footage over 11 days. This included Lauren's comments about Joseph, the summit night ascent, Lauren's collapse, the 45 seconds of filming during the medical emergency, and the descent. Paulo Reyes' audio equipment had captured approximately 90 hours of ambient and directional audio, including Craig's conversations with Joseph, where he overruled medical recommendations. 2 GoPro cameras mounted on Lauren and Derek's packs had captured additional angles. Craig Weston's personal phone had several videos he'd filmed casually at camps. Within 48 hours of Lauren's death, Craig reported to the network that all footage had been, quote, consolidated and secured. Within 72 hours, the network's legal team had the physical drives in their possession in Los Angeles. When Tanzanian authorities began their inquiry into Lauren's death, a standard procedure for any tourist fatality on Kilimanjaro, they requested all video and audio footage from the production team. The network's legal representative responded on January 15, 2020, 8 days after Lauren's death. Their response stated that production footage captured during the filming was proprietary content subject to intellectual property protections, and that the network would, quote, cooperate fully with the investigation through other means, including written statements from crew members. They refused to hand over the footage. The Tanzanian investigation, conducted by the Kilimanjaro National Park Authority in coordination with local police, had limited jurisdiction over a U.S. media company. They could compel the climbing company Summit Dreams Tanzania to cooperate. They could interview the porters. They could examine Joseph's logbook. But they couldn't compel a Los Angeles corporation to surrender intellectual property without a protracted international legal process. The investigation proceeded without the footage. Joseph Makundi cooperated fully. He provided his logbook, which documented every assessment, every warning, every overruled recommendation. The investigators noted that Joseph's documentation was among the most thorough they had ever seen from a Porter team leader. Every entry was timestamped. Every recommendation was recorded. Every rejection was noted. But without the video and audio footage, Joseph's logbook was treated as one person's account. And the production team was providing a different account. Craig Weston's written statement to the Tanzanian investigators, submitted on January 20, 2020, told a very different story from Joseph's logbook. Craig's statement said Lauren had been, quote, in good spirits throughout the climb. It said she had minor altitude discomfort consistent with normal acclimatization. It said the production team had deferred to the climbing guides on all medical and safety decisions. It said the summit push was conducted according to standard protocols with full guide approval. Every single one of these claims was contradicted by Joseph's logbook. Lauren was not in good spirits. She had been vomiting, experiencing visual disturbances, and showing altered mental status. Her symptoms were not minor or normal. Joseph had recommended descent on day 5 and immediate descent at 3:20 a.m. on summit night. The production team had not deferred to climbing guides. Craig had overruled Joseph's recommendations on at least 4 documented occasions. The summit push was not conducted with full guide approval. Joseph had written continuing under protest in his logbook. Craig's statement was, put simply, a lie. A comprehensive, carefully worded lie designed to shift responsibility away from the production team and onto the climbing guides and Lauren herself. Share this video if you believe the truth matters more than corporate legal strategies. Because the people who fought for the truth in this case had to fight for years. The Tanzanian investigation concluded in March 2020. Their findings were limited by the lack of video evidence, but still significant. The report stated that the deceased showed symptoms consistent with severe altitude sickness that warranted descent, and that the Porter team leader's recommendations for medical intervention were not followed by the expedition's decision-makers. The report recommended that Summit Dreams Tanzania review its protocols regarding authority delegation to non-climbing production teams. The report did not assign criminal blame. It was treated as an accidental death with contributing factors of inadequate medical response. The investigation never examined the network's pre-existing knowledge of Lauren's medical condition because they didn't know about it. Dr. Hollister's report wasn't in the investigation file. Sandra Voss hadn't come forward yet. The medical screening was an American corporate process, invisible to Tanzanian investigators. Meanwhile, the public narrative was forming, and it was forming around one viral clip. On January 12, 2020, 5 days after Lauren's death, a clip surfaced on social media. It was Lauren's comment about Joseph's English. 12 seconds of footage. Can someone get me a guide who actually speaks the language? I can't understand what he's saying and I don't have time for a translation. The clip spread instantly. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 14 million times. The narrative was set, entitled "Reality Star Disrespects Humble Local Guide, Ignores His Advice, Dies on Mountain. Karma." But here's the question nobody asked at the time. Where did that clip come from? All footage had been confiscated by the network's legal team. Craig had collected every memory card, every device. All proprietary content was supposedly secured in Los Angeles under legal protection. So how did 12 seconds of that protected footage end up on social media? The clip was posted from an anonymous account that was created on January 11th and deleted on January 14th. The account had no other posts, no profile information, no followers before the clip went viral. Sandra Voss would later testify that she believed the network itself leaked the clip. Her reasoning: the clip showed Lauren being cruel to Joseph. It framed the story as, arrogant celebrity gets what she deserves. It did not show Craig overruling Joseph's medical recommendations. It did not show Lauren's collapse. It did not show the production team's failures. It showed exactly what the network wanted the public to see: a story about one woman's bad behavior, not a story about corporate negligence. The clip was a firewall, Sandra said in her testimony. If the public was angry at Lauren, they wouldn't look at the network. They wouldn't ask about the medical report. They wouldn't ask about the production schedule. Lauren was dead. She couldn't defend herself. She was the perfect scapegoat. Sandra's theory was never proven. The network denied leaking the footage. The anonymous account was never traced, but the effect was exactly as Sandra described. The public narrative became, Lauren Ashby died because she was arrogant and rude. End of story. Except it wasn't the end of the story. Because Lauren's family was about to do something the network didn't expect. They were going to sue. And the lawsuit would crack open everything the network had tried to hide. Lauren's mother, Diane Ashby, and her sister, Claire Ashby, retained an attorney named Margaret Okafor in April 2020. Margaret specialized in entertainment industry negligence cases. She had handled 3 previous cases involving reality TV injuries. She knew how networks operated. She knew how they protected themselves. And she knew that the missing footage was the key to everything. Margaret filed suit in Los Angeles Superior Court in June 2020. The defendants were the network, the production company, Craig Weston individually, and Summit Dreams Tanzania. The claims included wrongful death, negligence, fraudulent concealment of medical information, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The network's legal team immediately moved to dismiss. They argued Lauren had signed comprehensive liability waivers. They argued she had been medically cleared. They argued she had voluntarily chosen to continue climbing against guide recommendations. Margaret countered with a single question that would define the case. If Lauren was medically cleared, Why did the network's own physician flag vascular risk and recommend specialist clearance that was never obtained? The network's lawyers asked for the question to be stricken. The judge denied their request. Discovery began. And discovery is where corporations lose control of their narratives. Because discovery means documents, emails, internal communications, the things companies write when they think nobody outside the building will ever read them. The first document that mattered was Dr. Hollister's medical report, the full, unredacted report, including his recommendation for specialist clearance, obtained through discovery in September 2020. The second document was an email chain between the network's head of unscripted programming, a man named Darren Koch, and the production coordinator's supervisor. The email was dated November 15, 2019, 3 days after Dr. Hollister's report was received. The relevant portion read, Ashby Medical Flag. We've reviewed and determined the risk level as acceptable. Specialist consult not required at this time. Production timeline remains unchanged. Do not share specifics with talent or on-ground crew. Do not share specifics with talent or on-ground crew. Lauren was the talent. Joseph was the on-ground crew. The network had explicitly ordered that neither of them be told about the medical risk. The one person whose life was in danger and the one person positioned to protect her were both deliberately kept in the dark. This email would become the single most important piece of evidence in the case. It transformed the lawsuit from a negligence claim into something approaching intentional misconduct. The network didn't just fail to act on the medical report, they actively suppressed it. And there was more. Because the discovery process also revealed what happened to the footage. All of it. Chapter 6. The footage they destroyed. The network's legal team had claimed in their initial response to the Tanzanian investigation that all production footage was secured and preserved in accordance with standard media archival practices. This claim was repeated in their response to the Ashby family's lawsuit. All footage preserved. Available for review under appropriate legal protections. This was false. Margaret Okafor's forensic media expert, a digital analyst named Kevin Park, examined the hard drive surrendered by the network during discovery. His findings, filed with the court in January 2021, were devastating. The drives contained approximately 31 hours of video footage. The production team had recorded approximately 74 hours. 43 hours of footage were missing. Kevin Park's analysis showed that files had been deleted from the drives. Not accidentally. The deletion patterns were consistent with selective manual removal. Specific files had been targeted. The deletion timestamps clustered around two dates: January 8, 2020, the day after Lauren's death, and January 22, 2020, the day after Craig Weston submitted his written statement to the Tanzanian investigators. The deleted footage, based on file naming conventions and remaining metadata, corresponded to specific time periods during the climb. All footage from Day 5 at Barranco Camp, the day Joseph recommended descent and was overruled. All audio from Craig's conversations with Joseph about medical recommendations. All footage from the summit night approach between midnight and Lauren's collapse at 5:45 a.m. The 45 seconds of footage Mia Chen filmed during Lauren's medical emergency. All footage of the descent and CPR attempts. Gone. Selectively removed. The footage that showed the production team's failures, the overruled warnings, and Lauren's deterioration had been specifically targeted and deleted. Now here's where this gets even worse. Kevin Park determined that the deletions on January 8th were performed using a standard file deletion method. This meant the data was potentially recoverable through forensic analysis of the drive sectors. The deletions on January 22nd, however, were performed using a military-grade data wiping tool that overwrote the deleted sectors multiple times. Whatever was deleted on January 22nd was gone permanently, unrecoverable. The January 22nd deletions corresponded to the summit night footage and the medical emergency footage. The most critical evidence. Permanently destroyed. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell right now, because stories like this, where powerful companies destroy evidence and silence witnesses, only get told when channels like ours dig deep enough to find them. Every subscriber helps us keep doing this work. The network claimed the deletions were, quote, routine archival management, and that the missing footage was non-essential B-roll with no evidentiary value. Kevin Park's report directly contradicted this. The file naming conventions indicated the deleted files were primary camera footage, not B-roll. The metadata showed they were filmed during the exact time periods that were most relevant to the investigation. Judge Patricia Moreno, presiding over the case, issued a spoliation sanction against the network. This meant the jury would be instructed that the destroyed footage could be presumed to have contained evidence unfavorable to the network. In legal terms, this was devastating. It meant the jury could assume the worst about what the footage showed. The network appealed the sanction. The appeal was denied. But even without the destroyed footage, the surviving evidence was damning. 31 hours of video still existed. And within those hours were moments the network had apparently decided were not incriminating enough to delete. They were wrong. Surviving footage included Lauren's Day 3 comment about Joseph's English, the clip that had already gone viral, but it also included additional context that had never been seen publicly. In the minutes before Lauren's comment, the footage showed Craig Weston coaching Lauren, not explicitly telling her what to say, but priming her. He told her the footage was flat. He told her they needed moments. He asked her to engage more with the team. This context transformed the viral clip. Lauren's comment wasn't purely spontaneous cruelty. It was partially manufactured. Encouraged by a director who wanted conflict for content, Lauren made the choice to say what she said. But Craig created the environment that prompted it. He pointed the gun. Lauren pulled the trigger. The surviving footage also included a conversation between Sandra Voss and Craig on day 4. The conversation where Sandra raised concerns about Lauren's health, and Craig told her to focus on logistics. Sandra's testimony was corroborated by the footage. Her account was accurate. Craig's written statement to investigators, which claimed the production team deferred to guides on medical decisions, was demonstrably false. Additionally, Derek Tran's conversation with Craig about Lauren's symptoms was partially captured on audio. Derek's warning about Lauren's vomiting, headaches, and declining condition. Craig's dismissal. All on record. Margaret Okafor presented this evidence in depositions throughout 2021. Craig Weston was deposed in March 2021. His deposition lasted 3 days. Under oath, confronted with his own written statement and the contradicting footage, Craig revised his account significantly. He admitted he had overruled Joseph's recommendations. He said he had done so based on his assessment of Lauren's willingness to continue. He admitted he had not informed Lauren of Joseph's Day 5 descent recommendation. He said he didn't want to alarm her. He admitted he had instructed the crew to surrender all footage and recording devices. He said this was standard procedure for proprietary content. When asked about the deleted footage, Craig said he had not personally deleted any files. He said he had given the drives to a network representative on January 10th in Dar es Salaam. He did not know what happened to the drives between January 10th and when they were surrendered in discovery. The network representative Craig identified a legal affairs coordinator named James Whitfield, invoked the Fifth Amendment when deposed. He refused to answer any questions about the footage, the drives, or the deletion process. The case never went to trial. In September 2021, 20 months after Lauren's death, the network settled with the Ashby family. The settlement amount was sealed. Media reports estimated it between $4 million and $7 million based on similar cases. The settlement included a non-disclosure agreement that prevented the Ashby family from publicly discussing the terms or the network's internal documents. Summit Dreams Tanzania settled separately for an undisclosed amount and agreed to implement new protocols regarding authority delegation to non-climbing production teams. Craig Weston was not criminally charged. The Tanzanian investigation had closed. U.S. authorities determined that the death occurred outside their jurisdiction. Craig continued working in television production. As of the most recent public information, he was directing a home renovation show in Atlanta. He has never publicly discussed Lauren's death. Sandra Voss left the entertainment industry entirely after her testimony. She moved to Portland, Oregon, and works for a nonprofit focused on workplace safety advocacy. In her only public interview given to a podcast in 2022, Sandra said, "I think about Lauren every day. I had information that could have saved her life. I didn't share it because I was afraid of losing my job. She lost her life. I have to live with that math." Mia Chen, the camera operator who filmed for 45 seconds during Lauren's medical emergency, has never spoken publicly about the incident. Paulo Reyes gave a brief statement to a climbing magazine in 2021. "I heard everything. I recorded everything. Then they took the recordings and destroyed the parts that mattered. I don't know how to make peace with that." Derek Tran spoke more extensively. In a YouTube video posted in 2022, 2 years after Lauren's death, Derek described the summit night in detail. He had been climbing approximately 200 meters ahead of Lauren's group. He didn't witness her collapse directly, but he heard Joseph's radio calls. He heard the panic in Joseph's voice. He descended and helped with the evacuation for approximately an hour before being told to continue down to base camp. "Joseph was the only person up there acting like a professional," Derek said. "Everyone else was either frozen, crying, or thinking about their careers. Joseph was doing CPR on a woman who had insulted him to his face. I've never seen anything like that. I'll never forget it." Drop a comment right now and tell me what you think should have happened to Craig Weston. Should he have faced charges? Should he be allowed to keep working in TV? The comments section on this one is going to be intense, and we're reading every single one. But there's one more person whose story after Lauren's death demands attention. The person at the center of all of it. The man who spoke 4 languages, who carried Lauren down the mountain, who performed CPR for 12 minutes, who did everything right and still couldn't save her. Joseph Makundi, Chapter 7, The Man Who Carried Her Down. Joseph Makundi didn't watch the viral clip until 3 weeks after Lauren's death. He didn't have consistent internet access in Moshi. A friend showed him the video on a phone. 12 seconds. Lauren mocking his English. 14 million views. Thousands of comments. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive of Joseph. People called him a hero. They called Lauren a monster. They said she got what she deserved. They said karma caught up with her. They set up GoFundMe campaigns in Joseph's name. They shared his picture, which someone had pulled from Summit Dreams' website. Joseph didn't want any of it. "She died," Joseph told a Tanzanian journalist in his only interview, given in February 2020. "A woman died on my mountain. People are celebrating this. Why? She was unkind to me. Many clients are unkind. She is not the first. But she's the first one who died while being unkind. That doesn't make her death a victory. It makes it a tragedy with an ugly moment people want to remember." He paused during the interview. Then he said something that the journalist later called the most profound thing she'd heard in 20 years of reporting. "She called me a man who doesn't speak the language. But I spoke to her in her language, in her country's language, and she could not hear me. I told her to go down. I told her 3 times. 4 times. She didn't hear me. Not because of my English. Because she was already dying. Her brain was already sick. And I wonder, if her brain was working, if she was healthy, would she have listened? Would she have heard me? I think maybe yes. I think the woman who mocked me was already the sick woman. And the real Lauren, the healthy Lauren, might have been different. I will never know. But I think about it." Joseph's words didn't go viral. The 12-second clip of Lauren's cruelty got 14 million views. Joseph's compassionate, nuanced reflection on the woman who insulted him got approximately 40,000 views on the journalist's YouTube channel. That imbalance tells you everything about how this story was consumed by the public. The cruelty was entertaining, the compassion was not. If Joseph's words just changed how you see this story, subscribe to this channel. We exist to tell the parts of stories that other channels skip because they're not clickable enough. Joseph's perspective matters. Your subscription helps us keep telling these stories. After the settlement in September 2021, Joseph received a direct payment from the Ashby family. This was separate from the network settlement and was arranged privately through Margaret Okafor. The amount was never disclosed. Lauren's mother, Diane Ashby, wrote Joseph a letter that accompanied the payment. Margaret Okafor read a portion of the letter, with Diane's permission, during her podcast appearance in 2022. "Dear Joseph," the letter read, "my daughter was not the person in that video. She was better than that, and she was worse than that, and she was more complicated than 12 seconds can show. You tried to save her when you had every reason to walk away. You carried her down a mountain after she disrespected you in front of your team. I don't have words for that kind of decency. I'm sorry my daughter didn't see who you really are. I'm sorry you had to see who she could be at her worst. Thank you for trying. Thank you for not giving up on her. She didn't deserve your effort, but you gave it anyway. That tells me everything about who you are. Joseph continued working on Kilimanjaro after Lauren's death. But things changed. Summit Dreams Tanzania implemented new protocols after the settlement. Porter team leaders now have binding authority over medical decisions during climbs. Production teams must submit filming schedules for approval by the climbing guide, and the guide has veto power over any schedule that conflicts with acclimatization requirements. Client medical information must be shared with the lead guide before the climb begins. These changes were specific to Summit Dreams. They were not industry-wide. Other climbing companies on Kilimanjaro continued operating under their own protocols. Some adopted similar changes voluntarily. Many didn't. In 2022, a British tourist died of altitude sickness on Kilimanjaro while climbing with a different company. The circumstances were different from Lauren's death, but the underlying failure was identical. Symptoms were observed, descent was recommended by local guides, and the recommendation was overruled by the client and the tour operator. The mountain doesn't learn, people are supposed to. Now let's talk about what changed beyond the mountain. Because Lauren's death had ripple effects that extended far beyond Kilimanjaro. The Porter rights movement. For years, advocacy groups had been fighting for better wages, working conditions, and legal protections for Kilimanjaro porters. Lauren's case, specifically, the contrast between Joseph's professionalism and the production team's negligence, became a catalyst for renewed attention. The Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project, an existing nonprofit, saw donations triple in the 6 months after Lauren's death. New legislation was proposed in the Tanzanian parliament requiring minimum porter wages, mandatory health coverage for mountain injuries, and formal authority for porter team leaders in safety decisions. As of 2023, the wage provision had passed. The health coverage and authority provisions were still in committee. Joseph Makundi became an unofficial spokesman for porter rights, though he resisted the role. He spoke at 2 industry conferences, one in Nairobi, one in Kathmandu, about the need for local guides and porters to have binding authority over safety decisions, regardless of who is paying for the expedition. The person who knows the mountain must have the final word, Joseph said at the Kathmandu conference. Not the person who knows the budget. Not the person who knows the television schedule. The person who knows the mountain. If you cannot accept this, do not come to our mountains. He received a standing ovation. Then he went home to Moshi, walked his daughter Amara to her nursing program orientation, and went back to work. Reality television also faced scrutiny. Lauren's case was cited in a 2022 investigative report by a major newspaper examining safety practices across unscripted television production. The report found that medical screening protocols for reality TV were inconsistent, often superficial, and rarely involved follow-up when issues were flagged. Multiple production insiders described a culture where physical risk was treated as content opportunity rather than safety concern. The Screen Actors Guild and the Directors Guild both issued updated safety guidelines in 2022 that included provisions for extreme environment filming. The guidelines recommended, but did not require independent medical officers on productions involving high altitude, deep water, or extreme temperature filming. The guidelines were advisory. Compliance was voluntary. As of 2024, no major production company had been penalized for ignoring them. Subscribe right now if you believe the entertainment industry needs to be held to higher standards when people's lives are at risk. And share this video with anyone who only knows the viral clip version of this story. They deserve to know what really happened. Now let me tell you where everyone is today. Joseph Makundi is 45 years old. He still lives in Moshi with his wife Grace. His daughter Amara completed her nursing degree in 2023. His 2 younger children are in secondary school. He still leads porter teams on Kilimanjaro. He has completed over 230 ascents. He carries a laminated card in his logbook that lists the symptoms of HACE and HAPE in 4 languages. He added it after Lauren's death. When new clients arrive, Joseph introduces himself the same way he always has. He states his name. He explains the route. He explains the acclimatization schedule. He explains the symptoms to watch for. He does this calmly, clearly, and in excellent English. If a client mocks him, he doesn't respond. If a client ignores his medical advice, he documents it in his logbook, informs base camp, and continues doing his job. "I cannot force people to listen," Joseph said in 2023. "I can only tell them the truth and hope they hear it." Diane Ashby, Lauren's mother, retired from her job at the veterinary clinic in 2021. She volunteers with a bereavement support group in Medford. She does not watch reality television. She has never watched the viral clip of Lauren mocking Joseph. She asked Margaret Okafor to describe it to her instead. After hearing the description, Diane said, "That's not my Lauren. But it is something my Lauren was capable of. I raised her. I know what she could be. I loved her anyway. I love her now." Claire Ashby, Lauren's sister, manages the Lauren Ashby Memorial Fund, which provides scholarships for Tanzanian students pursuing careers in emergency medicine and wilderness safety. The fund has awarded 14 scholarships since 2021. Each scholarship letter includes a line written by Claire in memory of Lauren Ashby, who learned too late that the people who carry us up the mountain deserve our respect. The network that produced Beyond Limits canceled the show after Lauren's death. Season 2 never aired. The network itself was acquired by a larger media company in 2022. The executives involved in the decision to suppress Dr. Hollister's medical report have not been publicly identified beyond Darren Koch, who left the company before the acquisition. His current position is unknown. Craig Weston continues to direct television. He has not publicly acknowledged any wrongdoing. He has not apologized to Joseph Makundi, to the Ashby family, or to anyone else involved. Court records indicate he was deposed for 3 days and revised significant portions of his original account under oath. No perjury charges were filed. Sandra Voss lives in Portland. She told the podcast interviewer in 2022 that she has applied for jobs in the outdoor recreation industry, hoping to work on safety protocol development. "I want to make sure the next Sandra Voss in the next tent on the next mountain doesn't have to choose between her career and someone's life," she said. "That choice shouldn't exist." And Lauren Ashby. Lauren is buried in Medford, Oregon. Her headstone reads, "Lauren Marie Ashby, 1985 to 2020, beloved daughter and sister." There is no mention of television, mountains, or Kilimanjaro. Her family wanted the stone to say who she was, not how she died. The purple crayon drawing that Diane kept from Lauren's childhood. Lauren had drawn it at age 7. A picture of their house with everyone inside sits in a frame on Diane's mantle. Next to it is a photo of Lauren at age 12, holding a volleyball, grinning. Before the cameras, before the followers, before the mountain. Here's what I want you to take from this story. Not the viral clip, not the karma narrative, not the simple version. Lauren Ashby was a flawed person. She was vain, insecure, and capable of casual cruelty. She mocked a man who was trying to protect her. That's true. It happened. It's on camera. But Lauren Ashby was also a person who was sent to a dangerous environment by people who knew she was at risk and didn't tell her. She was managed by a director who manufactured conflict for content and overruled medical recommendations for his production schedule. She was failed by a system that valued her screen time more than her life. Joseph Makundi was the only person who consistently prioritized Lauren's safety. He was overruled, dismissed, and mocked. He carried her down the mountain anyway. He performed CPR anyway. He grieved for her anyway. The mountain didn't kill Lauren Ashby. A series of human decisions killed Lauren Ashby. Some were hers, most were not. And the evidence that could have proven exactly what happened was deliberately destroyed by the people who had the most to hide. That's not karma. That's not justice. That's a preventable death disguised as a cautionary tale about arrogance. Joseph Makundi knows this. Diane Ashby knows this. Sandra Voss knows this. Now you know it too. The next time you see a 12-second clip that tells you everything you need to know about someone's death, remember this: 12 seconds is never the full story. The full story takes longer. It's messier. It's harder to fit into a comment. It doesn't go viral. But it's the truth. And on mountains, and everywhere else, the truth is the only thing that can save us. Joseph still climbs Kilimanjaro. He'll be there tomorrow morning, checking a client's hydration, noting symptoms in his logbook, recommending descent if the signs are there, hoping they listen, knowing some won't. He does it anyway. If you've watched this far, you understand why this story matters beyond one woman and one mountain. Subscribe to this channel for more investigations like this. The full story, every time, no shortcuts. Our next documentary covers a disaster that killed 11 people in 18 hours, and the investigation revealed truths even darker than what you've heard today. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think the real cause of Lauren's death was. Not the simple answer. The real one. And if there's someone in your life who only knows the viral clip version of this story, share this video with them. They deserve to know what really happened on Kilimanjaro. Joseph Makundi speaks 4 languages. He tried to save a woman's life in every one of them. Nobody heard him. Make sure someone hears him now.